Good evening. Good evening again. Sorry about that. This is call to order for the July 1st, 2025 Business Operations and Finance Committee meeting. Call to order at 5:03. Mrs. Shope, could we get a roll call, please?
Yes. Amy Levy.
Here.
Tom Hankins cannot be with us this evening, so Brian Nichols.
Here.
All members are present except Tom Hankins.
Thank you. Could I get an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
I'll second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried.
No, the 5:20 minutes were a holdover from our last meeting, but we're going to run into the same issue. So if we could hold that one over, and then is it okay if I just bring up my point about the 6:03 minutes, or?
First of all, let's move May 20th to the next meeting. Okay, thank you. Board Member Levy.
Thank you. Just wanted to add to the minutes the 3 action item. The motion to approve the line of credit should include language not to exceed $4 million. It's not currently included in the minutes. And unless anyone objects to that addition, I move approval of the June 3rd minutes as amended.
I'll second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Okay, next up we have the May financials. Mrs. Elwood, you're on.
Thank you, and good evening to the committee members. The presentation tonight is the month ended for May 31st, 2025. Materials were posted into board docs and made publicly available. Attached in the report are detailed notes, and I will highlight on some of those notes. To start off with, the summary page of the monthly summary report, it does show that there are net change for the month as a deficit, which is typical for school districts because revenues come in certain months, but expenditures typically run about the same every month. Is there any questions about the monthly summary? Next is the cash and investment report. Not a whole lot of activity going on here. Our cash position this year compared to last year is pretty well set. We do have some investments at PMA, and those investments came due partially at the end of June, and then the rest of them will come due in a couple of days, and then we'll have the interest report for those in June. Is there any questions about the investments? Seeing none, I'll keep moving on.
Actually, I do have a question.
Yes.
I didn't have a chance to look back that last month. This question on the OPEB Trust Fund 73 at First Mid. Is that interest rate the same as it was? Has that changed?
No, the interest rates at First Mid are staying pretty stable.
Okay.
Yeah, they might change by like 0.1%, but they haven't been changing very much.
Thank you.
Yep. And the reason why there's no percentages on the associated is because those investments are, they change every month. Moving on to the revenues. Just wanted to highlight a couple of the bigger revenues that came in the month of May. Our interest was pretty substantial for May at, let me scroll back up here so I'm in the right place here, at $55,000. There was also personal property aid. I know we have it listed as computer aid, but this also includes personal property aid. This $512,000 came in for the month of May, and that was substantially higher than previous year. There was also claims that came in for Title I. We've been trying to do the claims a little bit more monthly so that we can get those monies a little sooner. And then this last item on here in Source 780, this is Medicaid revenues. And the Medicaid revenues are actually split between Fund 10 and Fund 27, depending on what year they pertain to. So anything that is from a cost settlement, which is previous year's Medicaid cost settlements, those come into Fund 10 so that they don't disrupt the maintenance of effort in Fund 27. And then in Fund 27, you'll see that we also have a 780 revenue. That's this 36,000. A little bit came in for the month of May, but the majority of it was costed out. And those are Medicaid billings that we're doing for special education students. Another point for the month of May, we are at about, if I go down, back up to Fund 10, we're at about 86% of our budget has been, 64% of our budget has been received. And the reason why only 64%, even though we're at the end of May, is because quite a lot happens in the month of June. A lot of revenues come in June, or they come in after June, and we mark them as receivables in June. And scrolling down to overall revenues, for overall, we're at 60%, which is typical for the month of May, if you look comparative to last year at the same time. Is there any questions on revenues? Moving on to expenditures for the month of May. Pretty typical for the month of May. The largest expenditures for the month of May are salaries and benefits. Salaries and benefits make up about 81% of our $4.5 million in expenditures for the month of May. Purchase services make up about, let me scroll down here, make up about 16.68% of the expenditures. Most of the contracted services, are utilities, transportation, contracted teacher costs, contracted cleaning costs, those types of things. Is there any questions about any of the expenditures for the month of May? Overall, I did want to point out too that also for expenditures as compared to May as compared to other months, or compared to year end, even though it says we're only 52% of our budget expended, there's a lot of processes that happen in June. We do contract completion for our teachers so that those July and August payments all get costed back to June. So June looks extremely inflated when we look at expenditures that happen in June compared to what happens in previous months. And there's also other journal entries and things that happen also in the month of June. All of our aid payment adjustments for open enrollment and for voucher payments and all those types of things, all those hit in the month of June also. That's why it looks like we haven't really spent as much of our budget as we should have or would normally. And then if we go all the way down to the end of the report, we are right now at like 56%. And the reason why there's a difference between this year and last year compared to May is because we had a large debt payment that happened in earlier in the year last year, $14 million debt payment that happened in 23-24. Any questions about May expenditures? Seeing none, I'll continue. The next report on the list is the fund balance report. The fund balance report is basically just a recording of the revenues and expenses and where the balances are today, or I'm sorry, at the end of May. Any questions about fund balance?
So I have a question, or a couple question observations. So it decreased by almost $2.7 million, but according but looking versus last year, we're actually up almost 4.3 million above last year. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So how do you think that will look next month?
I haven't done year-end calculations yet. When I did
Okay.
them a couple of months ago, we were looking pretty close to being right on, equaling revenues, equaling expenditures, which would put us in a good place.
Yes.
We just ran, excuse me, contract completion. So over the next week or so, I'll need to look at those numbers again to see where we're at. I also have a lot of journal entries to do for health insurance, but the health insurance numbers did look pretty good from what I saw so far.
Okay, that's good.
Okay, thank you.
And then one other question I have, this kind of goes back, I guess, back to the bidding. But in the reports, we were getting the accounts payable register, but I haven't seen that for a while. Is that still available too?
It's in the library, yes.
It's in,
The library.
oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, very good. Thank you.
Yep. Let's see here. The fund balance report, and then I think I also had a purchase order report in here. Just a touch base on this, there was a purchase order that was done for $133,000, but that was a board-approved purchase of those new line boards that's on this report. And I think that was all yes, that was my last point I wanted to make on the reports. Did anybody have any other questions regarding the financials?
Board Member Levy, anything?
No, you actually asked my question. I was going to ask for an estimated projection for fund balance for June, since there's so much more activity happening that month, but you already covered it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Board President Johnson, do you have anything? No? Okay. Okay, I will entertain a motion to move for financials to the full board.
So moved.
I'll second. Any discussion? Hearing none, approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ask all in favor.
Sorry about that. Yeah, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Now we move forward. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is the end-of-year food service presentation. So, Mrs. Smith and company, it's all yours.
So this is our year-end review, and, oh, I'm sorry. And I'm going to let Sarah introduce her team.
Good evening. This is our amazing Chartwell's team for the food service program. To my immediate right, we have Jeb Warner. He is our district chef. Holly Goodwin, who is the jack of all trades. She is the most amazing assistant director. Tara Miller, she is new to our team. She is the dietitian, and she's also working on marketing programs for the school district, as well as Amy Kerrigan, who is my district manager, or the district manager. She oversees Illinois and parts of Wisconsin and Iowa and Indiana. And yeah, so Amy and I have been together for many, many years. So I'm just really happy to be able to finish up this first year for me with Beloit. I think we've had a lot of really positive changes happening in the school district with the food service program, and I'm going to let Dawn explain a little bit more as to what.
So in the interest of time, I'm going to not read every slide to you because I think you know. So I did want to touch a little bit on the National School Lunch Program because some people just really are not aware of where and how this came to be. So a little history is in 1930, during the Great Depression, the USDA purchased excess of foods from farmers and that became our commodity program. And so we were feeding families with just commodities at that time. So during World War II, there were shortages of workers. Fathers were off to war, mothers had to enter the workforce, and the children were left without food. And so the school districts were now feeding the children with these commodities. So in 1946, Harry S. Truman signed the National School Lunch Act. In 1960, Congress passed the Child Nutrition Act, offering free and reduced priced meals to students. In 2010, President Obama signed the Healthy Hunger-Free Kids Act. During this time, healthier foods were being offered in calories, fat, trans fats, and sodium were carefully analyzed. Beloit, at that point, utilized the NutriKids software to ensure compliance with these new regulations. A la carte foods, school stores, and competitive foods were closely monitored, and we were not popular. The National School Lunch Program, eligibility and price, we were at one time, we did have free and reduced price meals and full price meals. And in 2014, we moved to CEP. It became available. We have been obviously the last 11 years with CEP, meaning that all of our children eat for free. It has taken a lot of stigma away from our kids. I have been here since 1991, so it was very difficult in the beginning because students that were free or reduced, they felt bad eating, and there were many times that we actually had to help the parents fill out the applications, and it was just really tough. So I can tell you in the last 11 years that we've been with CEP, it has really improved the National School Lunch here in Beloit. And I'm actually currently working with the Janesville School District and the Turner School District to talk about CEP with them and how they can get that implemented in their school districts. So the National School Lunch has the standards and nutrition. DPI is involved. Obviously, you know we were just audited. So they watch it very carefully. They make sure that when we send in a claim that, they check the claim to make sure that it is in fact, how many students that are eligible to have free and reduced price, CEP meals. On the grant slide, I have a couple updates. So you can see the fresh fruit and vegetable grant. We were one of the first school districts to have the grant. We started actually with the Wright Building and the Hackett Building many years ago. And like I said, we were like the first district to just pilot it. We just found out today that we were approved for the fresh fruit and vegetable grant for next year at $99,000. And the reason that's down is that Gaston did not apply for the fresh fruit and vegetable grant. The supply chain grant, we're going to check on that because that hasn't been submitted yet. That grant actually runs for 20 years. And it's just automatic. It's what they do is right now they're using our milk numbers, and so that they go by the participation. And so you can see we got quite a bit last year. So, we're hoping for at least that this year. The equipment grant, there is an update. And there's no update, I should say. Right now, I have applied for $30,000, and I got something, I think, last week saying that they're still analyzing whether or not this grant is going to be dispersed. I will say that we have gotten many equipment grants, and part of that is lots of school districts they don't apply for them, and so the money's there, and so we've gotten extra money. The very first equipment grant that we received was the Obama stimulus grant, and it was over $100,000. We were the highest in the state of Wisconsin to get that grant. So we write them all. Anything that's out there, we just write them. Whether we get them or not, it's still worth a shot because people just don't apply. And so then the next slide would be like the federal food service aid. You can see that what aid we're getting. Right now, we're not seeing that that they're going to do any cuts with this particular aid. I know they're talking about more of the pantries and the fresh fruit and vegetables that are being given to districts in their pantries. So we're kind of waiting to hear more about that. And then, like I said, with DPI, that happens every 5 years that we're audited by the DPI. And then I monitor two sites per month, and so that actually goes to DPI too, so that they can see that we're monitoring and that we're making sure that whatever we're claiming, what meals we're claiming are, are true, and because the meals are actually being tracked by Chartwell's under AccuClaim. So on the next one, I just wanted to let you know that the district has always outsourced their food service program. It originally was Creative Food Service. When I was in the school district, it was Creative Food Service. And then DACA was part of the Compass Group, which is now part of Chartwell's. They were here for many years, and then for 25 years we had Aramark, and then we're on year 2 with Chartwell's. So our summer food service program has been, it's been pretty active, actually. So we have the Beloit Public Library, Merrill Community Center, the State Line YMCA, the high school, Cunningham, Todd, Converse. We invited the Family Services, the new building, which we really, really wanted to put a food truck there because the poverty level right there is really, it's an intense area. They weren't ready to pull it off yet, but we are really kind of working with them because they have a great program there. So you can see that we have a lot of community outreach, and I've been at all of the sites in the last week, and it's amazing to see they're bringing baby cribs down at the Y and bringing kids for food, and it is nice that we're able to do this in our community too. So the next slide, it kind of tells you the segregated duties so you can see that Chartwell's has some duties, the school district has some duties, and then we have there's a joint duty that we both have to work together. And there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot to cover in these, with the duties that are that we have to do. The student participation, if you look at the 24-25, you can see that breakfast meals have gone down some. We had to change the way that we did breakfast at Fruzen and Aldridge. We were doing breakfast in the classroom and delivering to the classroom. They have to come out to the cart and get their food. Well, they changed it so that the kids were getting their food on the way into the building, and we only had 15 minutes to serve them breakfast. It did decrease our participation in breakfast at those two sites. I think that we'll work on that a little bit more for next year because it is a little bit concerning. And there's also a second chance breakfast that they have to be able to, if someone comes in late, they still have to be able to access breakfast. And then you can see the participation, that again is really the middle schools. The high school stayed pretty level. And our elementaries really stayed pretty level. It's where we're seeing a decrease is in middle school. And then the next slide is basically showing you, where our funding is coming from and where our expenses are, where expenditures are going out. We didn't really do a lot this year as far as updating or buying a lot of equipment. We kind of waited because of the McNeil. Because closing McNeil, we were able to utilize some of the equipment that was there, and we'll auction some of the equipment that we're not able to use, but we want to keep the newer equipment and get rid of the stuff that's older. Any questions on this part?
Board Member Levy?
Thank you. I have a few. Is it okay if I just run through them?
Sure.
Thank you so much. Quick question, on the slide for NSLP eligibility and meal price, what is the current poverty level? I know that students who are eligible need to be at 130% or below.
So the poverty level right now, let me see, I do have that in here somewhere, I think. I want to say it's 71% is what we are.
No, like the dollar amount that's considered the poverty level, and I think it, just for an average
do you
family,
know
because I know it
something?
fluctuates.
Yeah,
And you
I'm
can
not
get
sure. I was going to
perfectly
say,
fine. Next, so it's been my experience as a parent in the district that you have those household income forms, but they're not required. They're encouraged. And so I'm just wondering, what is our return rate for those forms? And the reason I ask is because as I was going through the presentation, the federal government covers households that are, in a certain category, local covers others. So I'm just wondering, for non-respondent households, who covers those charges for us to provide free meals?
so most of those are direct certified. So if they're
does that mean?
if they're on any sort of program, state aid, they automatically are certified. They don't need
Okay.
they don't need to have an application.
Okay.
So, and I think most of them are coming through direct cert.
And then if they don't fall into that category of direct certification and they don't respond to the household income, is that in any way putting the district at a disadvantage as far as collecting funds for these
I was going to
lunches?
say that,
I think I can answer that. So because we're CEP, that means every child is treated the same. Those income forms do not have anything to do with whether or not a child's meal is reimbursed at the federal rate, correct?
I think we use that more for Title I.
The household income forms are strictly used to waive school fees and,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
and to help increase those numbers for Title I tracking.
Perfect, thank you so much. And then with respect to the community eligibility provision, and this is like presentation adjacent, but I'll be brief. Has your team given any consideration to potentially presenting at like the WASB State Education Convention? And the reason I ask is because I sat on the state policy committee and there was a push to get other districts around the state to encourage our legislators to move districts towards CEP, and there was a significant pushback to that, which surprised me a little bit. And it may be lack of information or how the program works or whatever the reasons to be against that are not very clear to me. Has your team had any conversations about potential, and I love that you're working with Turner, and I believe you mentioned School District of Janesville, to present and hopefully provide information about what it takes to be CEP and the benefits to districts at the state level?
So right now, I'm working on we're at the county level at this point. So of course, Jill, she's part of this, and that she's looping us together because they're a little afraid of it. So, and I think a lot of people just don't understand it. And I think that there's stigma on the other side that, well, you're a very poor community if you have CEP, but we have, food insecurity. We have to recognize that. Like Janesville, they have a few schools, but, not the whole school. But I wouldn't have an issue with it. I mean, I think right now at the county level, we've met twice, and then, we work with UW Extension too. So, I mean, I would not have an issue with that. Honestly, I'm really proud of it because I did see how hard it was, and it was very hard for kids to even come up with 40 cents. And to stand in the cafeteria and say, I only have 28 cents, what do I do? It was really difficult. I'm glad that we were the first ones to, jump towards it. But yeah, I wouldn't have any problem with that at all.
Thank you so much.
Board Member Levy, I did look on the Wisconsin's website for the information that you asked for. The number is $40,000 for a family of four, correct?
Thank you.
And then for a family for reduced, it's up to $57,000.
Any other questions before I move it over to Chartwell's?
Looks like you're good to go.
Oh, here's your empty slide. Sorry.
We have a PowerPoint presentation that Michelle is trying to, oh, it works. Fingers crossed.
Sound doesn't seem to want to work. Let's see.
It's a really fun PowerPoint presentation. I'm just putting that out there. Um,
Michelle, can you just do the presentation itself without the music or without the sound?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to tell it to start presenting, and it's not, so I guess I'll have to try and click through it for you.
We have a few videos, and that's probably where it's getting hung up. We went out on the streets and interviewed some students, and I think we got some really good feedback. But this presentation it's just a summary of all of the great things that everybody on our team was able to accomplish this year. Great pictures of Jeb in there, and Holly, Tara. Yes, it's that one.
To the other presentation, since the sound's not working.
Okay, that's fine, that's
Just give me
fine.
1 second to get it switched back.
Oh, that's nice. Oh, that's your presentation.
For sake of time, do you mind just possibly starting your conversation?
Oh, okay, sure, not a problem.
Thank you so much.
So one of the programs that we did launch this year, we had Discovery Kitchen, which Jeb was front and center at Aldridge and Fruzen, presenting the students with fresh recipe ideas for sampling really yummy food. What did you have? You had fresh fruit pizza? Yeah, the fresh fruit pizza the kids really liked. Tara has hit every single elementary school at least twice with Mood Boost. So it's about teaching the students about specific foods and how it does affect their moods. She had really fun giveaways, but it was very engaging. The kids were very, very curious as to what was going on, and they were interested in the food. She put out samples of, let's see, we had fresh raspberries and chocolate chips. There were blueberries and basil. I'm trying to think what else, but she was able to make it to all of the elementary schools twice. Jeb also did student choice at the high school, which is something that we will be having multiple times in the next school year. This is a student at Converse. So our lunchroom manager, Miriam, was asking the students at the table what they liked about the food. It was all very positive. Discovery Kitchen, of course. I know. Let's see. We also featured, let's see, Global Eats, I'm sorry, on all of the menus throughout the school year. We had fun days for the students where we had great giveaways. Let's see. The videos were really great. Oh, yes. That was Janae. She's at BLA. She was very happy with the menu change that we made with, let's see, the giant salad bar and changing and rotating out the stations on a weekly basis. Mood boost. You may be able to see Tara in there as she is in action. Yep, there we go. There's her station that she has set up, and I believe that is at Converse. So the students go through the line, and then they see her, and they get really excited, and they go straight towards her, grab as many samples as they want, and some of the plastic bracelets or sunglasses or mostly stickers. And the kids get really excited. We also had trading cards, so there were students that were actively looking for specific trading cards for Mood Boost. I feel like that's a Pokemon kind of thing. And, okay, that is, let's see, that's Norma. She is at our Sono station at the high school. That is a very, very popular station. It's not just nachos, but it's, you know, of course, it's the Chipotle concept, which everybody loves the bowl. So we're excited with the new menu options that we're going to be featuring for the upcoming school year with all of the stations, especially Sono. There is our awesome chef, Jeb. We paired up bok choy, which is a station concept and made to melt, and we had the students taste. They voted, and they really liked. I think they really liked the made to melt, which was the paninis. They really like paninis. So we will be incorporating that. And this was at, let's see, what was that? That was the field days for the high school. We had both of the food trucks out, and kids came, grabbed their lunches, and Holly was able to get some great feedback from these three students in the video. So. And I believe that should be it.
Kind of say the menu update that Sarah did at BLA was a huge success.
Yeah.
Very nice, very nice.
Thank you. Yeah, it was good. I was very pleased, very pleased. It's nice to see the students engaged and happy because, of course, you know, you select things with your eyes and with your nose and with your senses, and if the food looks good, you know it's going to taste good, and they're trying things that they wouldn't normally have on a regular basis. So if you're going to try something new, awesome. And that makes me very happy. Oh, here we go. Employee appreciation. This is something that I'm very proud of. All of our associates, of course, are recognized. We select a unit and a lead and an associate of the month, and we just show up with stuff. I send out, we have a text chain for all of our leads and seconds in command, and I let them know that Holly and I are out and about and to be on the lookout. So if they see us rolling into the parking lot, they know something's up. So it's always a very exciting Friday. It's my favorite Friday of the month, actually. So. Any questions? I'm sorry that the videos weren't working, but this was a really great year, and I enjoyed so much working with Dawn and working with my team. So, thank you.
Great. Mrs. Shope, do you think we'll be able to upload those to Board Docs and that we can view them later?
Sure.
Okay, excellent.
Thank you.
Any other questions from anybody? Well, thank you both. Thank the team for a good year, and keep up the good work, and it's not that far away. Thank you. Okay, next up, we have 4A, property liability, workers' compensation, and other business insurance renewals. Mrs. Elwood, you're back on.
Thank you. So what I'm presenting here tonight is our update to our insurance for the 25-26 school year. We didn't make any changes to the deductibles for 25-26 because the premiums for the property side and the insurances all came in pretty close to where they were last year. We could make a small change if we wanted, well, not a small change, we could make a change if we wanted to, that would save us $17,952, but that would change our deductible from $50,000 to $100,000, which, in my opinion, I wouldn't recommend doing that because we had already increased it the previous year, I believe, from 25 to 50. And to go to 100, that would exclude all those claims between 50 and 100,000, and the district would be responsible for any of those claims. And last year, I believe we did have a couple of claims that were for water damage and smaller things, but they would fall into that category. So I wouldn't recommend making that change. The largest part of the increase is the workers' comp. The workers' comp is controlled mostly by our rating, and on the very last item is the experience modification. When that number goes above 1, that's when your modification is more risky, and then your insurance costs go up. Did anybody have any questions about the insurance renewals?
For me, it's always a sore subject, but anyway, that's a personal thing. But yeah, that's a 20% increase on workers' compensation. That is pretty hefty.
That is correct.
Where was it last year? Do you recall what?
The rating?
Yeah.
The rating, if we look at the very bottom, the 24-25 rating is down here on the bottom. It went from 1.05 to 1.38.
Oh, okay. Okay, gotcha. Okay. Okay. Board Member Levy?
Thank you. Just a few quick questions, and I'm not sure of the cadence for when RFPs are issued, so please help me out with that. But was there an RFP? I'm just noticing that we have one option.
No, so Tricor is, I'm sorry, and I should have explained that. Tricor is our broker. So Tricor, we started probably about 3 months ago, talking to them about insurance and where we're going for 25-26. Tricor then sends out our information to a bunch of insurers, and they invite us to apply for the insurance. And we fill out lots of applications, and this is where Tricor goes and gets the best rates for us and puts it all together in one package.
Okay, so our insurer is not Tricor. They are our broker. Who
They are
is
our
the
broker.
actual insurer? I apologize, that wasn't obvious.
Nope, that's okay. EMC is the majority insurer for all of this, except for a couple of smaller pieces, and I don't know that I had that in front of me. I forgot the name of the company, but they're for the smaller ones. I think one was the, I think it was the crime, was under a separate company, but they all go through Tricor for the broker.
Okay, and then a couple other questions. Under premium summary, I'm just not familiar, what is inland marine and linebacker and global?
Yep. So the inline marine insurance covers items that are transportable equipment. So like if we put the lawnmowers on a trailer and transport it from one place to another, it'll cover that. If we're storing it off-site on another, or at another location, it'll cover that lawnmower. The linebacker coverage is part of the coverage for executive team, so school board members' liability. And the global coverage covers when our staff are out of the country.
Okay, thank you so much. So the inline marine, that's not covered under like vehicle insurance?
It is not. It's a separate piece.
So the vehicle insurance is only when the vehicle is stationary?
No, the vehicle, well, vehicle insurance is like your own car insurance
Yep.
for like our vans, district vans that we have. But then if you put a trailer on there and then you put another piece of equipment on that trailer, it covers that piece of equipment that's on the trailer.
Okay, so like non-traditional transportation, so like a
Yes.
snowplow would be covered under this, whereas like a car or van would be,
I think they kind of work in tandem, to be honest.
so this is
If
like
we
a
had a
supplement
claim,
to that.
we would be having our insurance broker go through it and tell us which one it's covered underneath.
Okay, and then
Mm-hmm.
under the property blankets, what are the extra expenses, under extra expenditures? What is considered property in the open? Is that like outside of a garage, or is that more nuanced than that?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I'd have to get back to you.
Okay, and then, so under property, we have blanket buildings and personal property, and then blanket extra expenses. I'm just not sure what the difference is there.
And I'm sorry, I don't have an answer for you, but I can get back to you on that one.
Okay.
Yep.
And then I think my last question, under general liability, is there a reason administrators aren't, so we have it for teachers and then elementary, kindergarten, junior high students, and then high school students. Are administrators covered under linebacker, or how does that work?
I think these are not dollar amounts. These are the numbers of people.
No, but I'm looking
Okay.
as categories of folks that are covered. So under general liability, we have teachers and then we have students. But like all category of personnel that is not considered a teacher, is there a reason they are not covered under general liability? Or is that part of that linebacker, or just help me understand that, please?
Nope, that's a good question. I'm not exactly sure why they categorize them out that way.
Because I'm assuming all employees are covered,
All
correct?
employees are covered, but sometimes they pull out different categories because they base rates on certain categories.
Okay. So let me just ask you this, for the purposes of a vote today, it may be kind of unclear the nuance of how categories of employees are kind of tracked, but under this policy, all categories of employees are covered.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Board President Johnson, did you have, no? Were you finished?
I was, but I do have one more, if that's okay. So thank you for explaining that like Tricor is the broker and they send out the information. Is there a reason that we don't get kind of like those top 3 bids and then we select? Or is part of our agreement with Tricor is that they do the selection for us? How does that work?
Well, to be honest, not every one of these insurance we get multiple bids on. A lot of it's whatever we get when we go to the pool to bid. Like, for example, the workers' comp, we're in the workers' comp pool, so this is the number we get. We don't have a choice for workers' comp. For the other pieces of insurance, they give us what the best price is. You know.
Is there a reason that doesn't come to the board for us to make a decision that for the parts where we do have choices, I'm just not clear why we aren't seeing those choices. We're just being asked to approve kind of this summary.
So Tricor has always been our broker in this space.
Yep.
And as from last year when we had this approved, that was the same space, and then the previous year as well. That's a great question. That's the way that we've been doing it here in the school district, and that's my best response at the current time.
All right, I would love to hear from colleagues, because if we, and I get if we're in a pool and this is the best rate, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of wiggle room for that. But components where we have a choice, I would be interested in seeing that and making a decision, but it could just be me. I'd love to hear feedback.
Board President Johnson?
I'm not against what Mrs. Levy is suggesting. My only concern and question would be, Mrs. Elwood, right now, do we have the employee bandwidth to do that, or do you say to Tricor, hey, bring this information to us, or does somebody in the finance department go and get that information? Right now, I don't want to burden you guys more if if this is the best we can get, I'm going to trust your opinion on that and say, okay, this is the best we can get. I'm all in favor of doing RFPs and bids for as much as we can, because you of all people know our precarious financial situation right now. But I'm looking to you for what you think might be the best direction.
So I got to be honest with you, this was my first go-around with working with Tricor, because I was working with them last year with Mr. Chady, but I wasn't as in-depth as I was this year. And a lot of the back and forth that Tricor does for us takes time. And then when we come to the end of the year, we're at a short time frame. So in order to bring all those quotes here to the school board meeting and then have somebody hash over what could be probably no decision, or maybe a decision between only one or two companies, I'm not sure if that's valuable for your time either. I trust that Tricor went through and did the best they could for us. I mean, they had bit higher numbers. He was talking 10% increases for the property pieces of this insurance, and they went back to the EMC company and renegotiated some of these prices down for us so that we didn't see as much of an increase overall. So in my opinion, I think that what the process has been for the last, I don't know, how many years have we used Tricor? 10 years, yeah. I think that process has been working.
Well, these are all good discussions. I think this is something that we need to take a deeper look at, you know, in the near future. But I think for the moment that this needs to be approved to move forward. Is that not correct?
That is correct, yes, because
Okay.
our insurance coverage starts today.
Today, yeah.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I would accept a motion to move forward renewal of the respective business insurances for the term commencing July 1st, 2025 to the full board for consideration and action.
So moved.
I'll second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Move to the full board. Okay, next up is item 4B, contracted service purchase approval. Mrs. Moore, or Dr. Garrison? Or
I'll
Mrs.
take it,
Moore?
yep. So the contract for, that you see here is part of the same rationale that we had from last time when the new contracts have to come to the committee for conversations. This is for our for our MAP growth and measurement, academic growth achievement test that we use. We call it the MAPS test. It's easier to say it that way. And so this is a standard contract that we have and is for $34,000 for approval.
Board Member Levy.
Thank you. Just a quick question. It's my understanding that this year there was a software issue that caused some delay in some of the standardized testing. It happened. It was just like delayed for maybe a day or two. And so I'm just wondering, is this related to that? And hopefully this will help remedy that, but I just want a clarification.
Sure. No, this is unrelated. This is our MAPS test that we do for our benchmark test for ELA and math. And so last time when I brought the group of all of the contracts for the 25-26 school year, I missed this one. So that's why it's here. You are right, though. We did have a glitch, and we worked through it. The state testing site is called DRC, and we work between the district and the state and DRC to figure out what it is. And so we had to do some troubleshooting. I believe some of it had to do with the updating that was made in our laptops. And sometimes what you have to do is troubleshoot. Is it a DRC site issue? Is it a state issue? Is it an us issue? And so that's basically what we found out, and we had to push out different updates. And then once we got that fixed, then we were more off to the races. But unfortunately, we did have that technology issue this year.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Sure.
I have just one question.
Yes, sir.
Is this the same price? Is it what is same price?
Yeah,
as
it's
last
pretty
year?
much a rinse and repeat contract.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Board President Johnson, do you have any questions? Okay. Okay, I would accept a motion to move approval of the attached purchase contract at $34,160 for the 25-26 school year to the full Board of Education.
So moved.
I'll second. Any additional discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We will move to the full board.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Morteg and Dr. Garrison. Okay, our next meeting is Tuesday, August the 5th at 5 p.m. Could I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I'll second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned at 5:58.
We'll start the regular board meeting about 6:05. Give everyone time to settle down and in. Ms. Shope, do you know where Dr. Garrison is? Oh, okay. Dr. Garrison? Yeah.
He's over back.
Oh, okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out tonight. We're glad to have everyone here, and it is so good to see this boardroom so full with such young faces and families. This is really exciting to have you here tonight. It is 6:07. I am calling to order the Tuesday, July 1st regular board meeting. Mrs. Schultz, may we please have a roll call?
Yes. Joanne Rue. Here. Megan Miller. Brian Nichols.
Here.
Tom Hankins is unable to be here this evening. Amy Levy.
Here.
Juan Romero.
Here.
And Tia Johnson.
Here.
All members are present except Megan Miller and Tom Hankins.
Thank you, Mrs. Schultz. May I get an approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Amy Levy, seconded by Juan Romero. Any discussion? Hearing and seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Tonight, I am excited to invite Jen Papke, Assistant Principal at Robinson Elementary, to introduce their top attendance students, and they have a lot of top attendance students here.
So I'm grabbing the handheld mic because I'm going to ask each student in attendance to come up and say their first name, but let me just quick say an acknowledgement to the families who are here tonight. The award is Excellence in School Attendance, and the students who are here tonight have had 97% or better attendance for the 24-25 school year. So can we have a round of applause for them? When this was a summer meeting and it was kind of pulled together as a crazy Papke thought, I thought, well, hopefully some of the kids will come out. And they came out because their families value education as much as they do. So I really appreciate everyone being here. Students, if you would just kind of come line this way and then make a line in front of the board, then we'll say the pledge after we say our names. Octavian, do you want to go first?
Say your name.
Say your name.
Octavian. Brandon.
Jordan, don't forget to say your name.
Jadalyn.
Say your names.
Everett. Flynn.
Jordan.
AJ.
Say your name.
Chachiwa. George. Christian. Ulysses. Luis.
Richard.
Apollo. Jackson. Hudson. Alice. Nairi. Micah. Ailani. Adriel.
Dariani.
Dariel. Giovanni. Kwamani. Caroline. Miles. Dacavion. Amy. Dalen.
And as we say in the morning, please join us as we face the flag and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Take it away, Robinson Cougars. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. I am proud of all of you, and this makes a difference not just this year, but every year that you continue with excellence like this. Thank you, families, also for coming out. Have a wonderful night. Thank you.
Mrs. Papke, and to all of the Robinsons families, thank you so much for being here tonight. It really warms our heart. For the board president's report tonight, I have no report prepared. I just want to say thank you again to all of the Robinson family and Ms. Papke for bringing the students here. It is very rewarding to us to see the students here in our space and remind us at our meetings what we're here for. Next up, we've got announcements and events. Board Clerk Juan Romero is going to read the announcements and events to inform board members, family, and community members of upcoming events in the school district of Beloit. Mr. Romero?
Good evening. These are the announcements for Tuesday, July 1st. Summer engagement activities at the schools continue. A Chalk the Walk contest is being held at Robinson on July 9th at 3:30 p.m. Popsicles with the Principal is happening at both Converse and Gaston on Thursday, July 10th at 4:30 p.m. Other upcoming events can be found on our district website or on our district Facebook page. There are several fun things happening in August as well, so save the following dates. August 9th for the first annual car show and August 23rd for the third annual community health fair. More information will be coming soon. As always, please visit our district website at beloitschools.net. Our future board meeting dates will include tomorrow, Wednesday, July 2nd. This will be the policy committee beginning at 4 p.m., followed by the first meeting of the Student Success and Support Committee ad hoc at 5:30 p.m. in the training lab at the Colac Education Center. Tuesday, July 15th, the Teaching, Learning, and Equity and Pupil Services Committee will meet at 5 p.m., followed by the regular board meeting at 6 p.m. There will be no summer school on Thursday, July 3rd, or Friday, July 4th, due to the holiday. We want to wish everyone a safe and happy 4th of July. This concludes the announcements for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Romero. Next, we have recognitions. Tonight, Dr. Garrison is going to do the presentation for recognizing the athletic program milestones and state qualifiers. Dr. Garrison?
Thank you. So at the end of the year, we try to make sure that we bring recognitions to not only our academic spaces, but there are also some athletic spaces that are still competing throughout the summer or towards the end of the school year. And we also have just some general milestones that our students have received. In boys soccer, Coach Beckham Deneau was named the Wisconsin Soccer Coaches Association All-State Team as a goalie. I'm sorry, Beckham Deneau was named I said Coach Beckham Deneau, the student, was named the Wisconsin Soccer Coaches Association All-State Team as a goalie. Beckham also set the school record for career shutouts as a goalie with over 22 shutouts there. Football, Tucker Sherrod was named to Wisconsin Football Association's WFCA Academic All-State Team. And in our 7 combined sports, boys soccer, boys and girls cross country, football, girls golf, girls swim, girls tennis, volleyball. We had over 25 athletic and academic all-conference awards. And so congratulations to those students for their academic spaces. In our winter sports, in boys basketball specifically, Amari Herford broke the 1,000 point mark at the beginning of the season. We did share a little bit of that information early in the year. I just want to bring note to it again. January 9th at the Woodmount High School became all-time leading scorer here at the Beloit Memorial, surpassing Andre Neal's previous record of 1,134 points. And so Amari Herford also made first team All-State. Boys swim, Aiden Greenlee, I might be saying his name wrong, Greenlee, so thank you. Greenlee, state qualifier in the 100 fly and broke the school record from 1981. I will say I cannot swim that fast. 45-year-old record and the 100-meter fly. Charlie, I might say the last name wrong, I apologize, Zambia, state qualifier this year, making him a 4-time state qualifier in the 50 free. Girls basketball, we had a couple of students who were over 1,000 point scorers. Lanesha Dubois scored 1,000 points against Wilmot, and Jocelyn Tibbetts scored her 1,000 point at Westosha Central on February 7th. And is currently top 10 in career points with 1,054. She also holds school records for 3-pointers made in a single game and a single season. Congratulations to our girls basketball. Boys wrestling, Owen West, state qualifier for the 132 pounds. And in our spring sports, round out here at the end, boys tennis, Alex Funk was a boys singles state qualifier. And in track and field, Jaden Coleman, shot put state qualifier, and Dontavius Olsen, the 300-meter hurler state qualifier. And that concludes some of our recognitions for this night.
Thank you, Dr. Garrison. It's so good to hear that the sports teams are doing well as also. Mrs. Shope, do we have any public comment tonight?
I do not.
Awesome. Our next report then is the superintendent report. Dr. Garrison?
Yes, so I would like to finally say welcome to July. to all the school district. June, getting to the end of the school year is always it's a long process. And of course, getting to the beginning of the school year starts the next day. And so I would like to thank the entire school district for working with all of us in an entire school year. We look forward to the new school year as we have already started that planning. I hope that our students and families and staff alike are enjoying some of the sunshine because we all know in a few months we may be back in colder weather. Maybe it's too early to talk about the cold weather. Additionally, I want to give a shout out to a smooth start in our buildings for summer school. We know that we had a little over 800 students registered for summer school, which was a huge undertaking by our staff. And so a big, huge shout out to our summer school staff who are right now, of course, in our summer school programming. We would like to thank all of our parents who have entrusted us with this space to continue the learning opportunities for their students. We also got some state budget information today. To be real honest with the entire community, it's still too early to determine what that all actually means. In this space, it's been proposed, and there's some bipartisan support in the area of special education funding, where we are looking at up to 45% return in that space from the state. Now, I say up to 45%. This is our biennial budget, so I think it's proposed at 43, and then move up to 45. So what does that mean for our school district? That could mean possibly closer to about $1 million that we can get back in funding. Now, again, this is where it is now. Of course, things could, of course, change over that time. Unfortunately, I shouldn't say unfortunately, right now as it stands, there would be no increase in the state budget to schools as well. And so that's a space that we would have to kind of work from. Naturally, we all wanted to see some state funding change as it pertains to what we would get from the state, but there are no proposed increases there. Now, there's still time for, of course, ongoing conversations, and naturally in this space, we have to, play the waiting game. I don't like giving this part of the report, but it is a space in which we have to recognize that the state has more work to do, and we have more waiting to kind of work through as well. We're also from a staffing conversation, we are, of course, still hiring. The school district of Beloit does have some vacant positions. I wanted to just put it out there. Sometimes in my report, I don't talk about vacancies, but we do have vacancies in the school district of Beloit. And if you're interested in joining our team, please go on WeCan or reach out to our HR department for those possibilities. And this is a space that every district during this time kind of ventures into. And last but not least, I would like to also thank all of the, of course, hard work that goes into a school year. I know I kind of grazed over it in the beginning, but working through a school year is a lot of heavy lifting on all of the staff, and that includes the KEC staff here. And so I wanted to give a shout out to all the KEC staff that helps during the months of registering students and, of course, bringing in new staff and, of course, getting staff ready to go into the buildings, the hiring processes. There's just a lot of things that goes into this. Of course, looking at budgets. So I'd like to just give a shout out to the KEC staff for all of the work that we continue to do throughout the summer, because naturally we are in the summer break. Okay. Naturally we are in this summer break, but the KEC is still open, and so we're still registering students. We're still looking to get more students involved. And there's going to be a special treat next week. I am going to be doing and this is like a G14 classified space. I'm going to be doing Michelle, what do we call it? We had a nice little trendy name.
We're calling it Conversations with Dr. Garrison, Superintendent, over at the Dairy Queen.
Correct. So I'll be handing out some free cones. If I won't say a whole bunch of them, but I'll be definitely paying for a lot of cones that day. And so we're working on just trying to increase the space that we call engagement during the school year. We are still in a new school year, one could argue, and I think that engagement also extends to central office. And so I will be over at the Dairy Queen, I believe on the 8th. Is that the date we scheduled? Yeah, July 8th. And so it's not out there yet. We haven't produced any information, but July 8th, around 11 to 12 o'clock, come say hello and get a free ice cream cone on Dr. Garrison. I think we're going to go up to about 100 or so people, and so that's the thought. We'll see, and hopefully that'll be another space for engagement here in the school district. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Garrison. Is that the Dairy Queen on Riverside or the one on Cranston?
This will be the Dairy Queen on Riverside.
Thank you. Well, I'm looking forward to that. I'm going to bring my family and all my cousins and nieces. No, I'm joking.
I did say students, families.
Dr. Garrison, Dr. Garrison, I do have a big family.
Next, we have the Business Operations and Finance Report, and Chairperson Hankins is out tonight, so Vice President Nichols will be doing this report.
Thank you, Board President Johnson. So the Business Ops Finance Committee meeting met earlier this evening at 5 o'clock, and we went over the finance. Mrs. Elwood gave us the May financials, which we moved to the full board. We had a great end-of-year food service presentation from Mrs. Smith and Sarah Warren from Chartwells and the Chartwells team. That was just for informational purposes. Mrs. Elwood also went over the property liability, workman's compensation, and other business insurance renewals, which we approved and moved to the full board. And Dr. Garrison and Mrs. Mortek gave us a proposal of contracted service from, I can't remember the name of it, the MAPS testing for the next school year, and we approved that. So, and we adjourned at 5:58. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Next, we have the legislative update, and Ms. Miller will be doing the legislative update for Mr. Hankins, who could not be here tonight.
Are you able to hear me okay? Is that a no?
Yes, we can.
Sorry about that. Just because earlier, Michelle and I were making sure we could hear you. Okay, hi. I can hear you all. Great meeting so far. Thanks very much for accommodating me being with my under the weather child. Just unfortunately, I have like a sad legislative update. Dr. Garrison already touched on this with the proposed budget. There is a website available that I did email a link to, and I'll make sure that Ms. Shope gets a copy of it, but I'm just going to pull this up again real quick. There is a preliminary publication available online that was put out by the state. It's on the DPI website, and it's got the estimates based on the current budget proposal of our general aid. So general aid isn't the only thing that is fundable for the district. There has been some really positive and encouraging news out there, particularly about like high needs special education funding. And certainly the proposal is not at the 60% for the regular special education funding that we were hoping for. But like Dr. Garrison said, a number that starts with a 4 is better than a number that starts with a 3. Unfortunately, when that's not coupled with an increase in general aid, that still is a huge cost to all of our students, including our students with special needs. And according to DPI right now, Beloit School District is looking at a decrease to the tune of 14.02% since they're not increasing any kind of general aid. So this, of course, goes to a variety of factors. And then what that equates to estimated, not for sure, estimated in dollar amount would be negative $9,550,697. So again, I will provide a link to that document, but I was not super excited to see that today. I have already reached out to some of our lawmakers, and I would encourage anybody who is interested in listening to do the same and encourage them to advocate for the importance of an increase to the general aid, particularly for our district, because clearly that's a very large number. Really just the magic formula for making things, getting on that road to making things more equitable for our district and for all students is both an increase in special education reimbursement at least 60%, along with an increase to general aid. So that's all I have for right now. There's ongoing discussions. We'll see what the week holds. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions? Nope.
Thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Megan. Next, we've got the board action and discussion items. First up, we have Mrs. Almendarez, the Executive Director of Human Resources. The purpose of this presentation is to share information with the board members, staff, and community regarding our addendum matrix. Addendums are used for additional pay for coaches, student extracurricular activities, and other building-based groups. We will also review other compensation in the district that speaks to a broader picture of district expenditures.
Good evening, Board. So first of all, it's an honor to be able to present this. It gives us quite an insight into where we're at with our staffing and our different methods of compensation to fill absences and vacancies. And we'll start off, though, with one of the other expenses that we have that are outside of our actual compensation plan, which is our addendum matrix. There's a matrix link embedded in the presentation itself that takes us to our current, most recent board-approved compensation, or actually athletics, activities, and clubs matrix. And the reason why this is included is because you will see some references to athletics and expenses within athletics. But it's a good starting point for the board to begin discussing with administration the direction that they're looking to go and look at some potential cost savings within that matrix. Next, we have, as I mentioned, the athletics cost by sport. And so in this slide, you see how all the different sports are broken down by total cost for the year. And this is based on 24-25 rosters.
We'll take the questions as we go through the slides. And so we can jump back real quick to the matrix if possible. And the reason why, again, Mrs. Almendarez mentioned that's there is because we'll be reviewing the matrix and looking at different opportunities there. We have not started that whole conversation yet, so it's a space in which when we're thinking about, budgets and money, we have to start kind of looking at other buckets of money. And we have started to look at this bucket, but now is the time in which we should start really thinking about what does that look like for not just this year, but possible future years. We're not at a place where we'll make a recommendation, but I did want to make sure I brought that to the board, and I can turn it back over for questions.
Do any board members have questions on the addendum matrix? Mrs. Levy?
Actually, I think I may have put my hand too soon, so I'll see if I can see if this question is, and if you need to hold it, go ahead. Right after the matrix, when you were, oh, my mic's not on. Right after the matrix, when you were discussing addendums, have those or will those be budgeted, or is this a new additional cost outside of what we are currently running in the school district?
So those are already budgeted for.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Do you know with what frequency the board approves the addendum matrix? Is that annual, biannual, whenever?
As needed when there are changes. I believe the last time that we approved it was 2023, I want to say. And so as long as nothing has changed, then we continue using the same matrix.
Okay, and another question I had with the matrix, you said that it's budgeted for, and I know it's a hen-picky question, but when we're looking at nickels and dimes, which we are, if we don't know if there's an opening for, say, the middle school coach for basketball, we don't know what that budget number will be until that person's hired, right?
Not necessarily.
In the budget, do you just put the highest dollar
We
amount
budget Right? I'm confirming because I worked with Mr. Chady previously, but go ahead.
Yep, the budget was based on previous historical numbers, and then a small increase just to cover what we could have for addendums.
Wonderful, thank you. Any other questions?
I'll come later. I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself.
All right. So then we get into
Actually, can we go back to the previous, just the athletic costs by sport? I know we was trying to capture any questions per slide, sorry.
Are there any slides on the athletic costs by sport?
Yes. Would it be possible to get that with the number of participants per sport included?
Yes.
I think that would make it a lot more useful. Thank you.
Sure thing.
And I have some questions, Mrs. Almendarez and Dr. Garrison. I understand Mr. Gratz is out on vacation, so maybe these are questions that would be more for him. Oh, I'm sorry, I did not see Mrs. Rue has her hand up. Mrs. Rue?
Yes. When looking at them, I see that it looks like most activities are 25 grand or less. A lot of them are under 10. And then football males is at 43,000 and Nightingales is at 47,000. Can you tell me why those are in some cases twice as much as some of the other ones?
So when it comes to this space, there's three separate seasons for the Nightingales, and I do believe Mr. Gratz is online. I could be wrong about that. Mr. Gratz, were you online at all?
I am.
Okay. The question was about the Nightingales, and I was going to attempt to answer it, but since you're here,
And football.
of course, and football. The Nightingales first. There's three separate seasons for the Nightingales, and I think that's why the 47,000 is there. But if you want to touch on that, that'd be great for the overall cost for the program.
Yep. So Nightingales has fall dance and cheer separate, winter dance and cheer separate, and then dance in the spring. So in reality, they have 5 unique seasons kind of occurring. Football, more or less for the safety aspect, has to have at least 3 coaches on the field for each of the teams that they put out. And more than likely, so that adds up to 9 coaches with our 3 teams. And more than likely, we would try to add one more so that 10, so we're never dropping below kind of a safe amount, just because I think we all know the liability around football over the last decade or so. So more or less for a safety piece for the football end.
Mrs. Rue, did you have any other questions?
No, thank you.
Any other questions? Mr. Gratz, I heard you say the Nightingales have 5 seasons, but I'm a little bit confused by that because don't we only have spring, winter, and fall sports?
Yeah. So cheer is one team, dance is one team. So in the fall, for example, they have 2 separate teams. It just falls under Nightingales, kind of all together. And then they have the same thing in the spring, a cheer team and a dance team separate from what it was in the fall. They have a new set of tryouts and they go through that process again. And then in the spring, they have another dance team. And so that's where the 5 unique teams comes in over those 3 seasons. Does that make sense?
Kind of.
Okay.
I'll see if anybody else
From
has.
what I can understand, sure. I think it's been a conversation for a few years, from what I understand. But looking at it and just trying to answer the question, I guess, as clearly as I can. Hopefully, it gives a little bit of insight.
Okay. Any other questions on this slide?
Yeah.
Mr. Nichols?
Am I overlooking hockey? Is it there or not there?
Ms. Elwood can assist with this question, but it comes from a different fund because it's a co-op sport. So it's split between all the schools that are involved in the co-op.
Thank you, Mr. Gratz.
I have another question, Mr. Gratz. I see that there's a golf for females, golf for males, and a co-ed golf. Can you explain that?
I probably need to jump in. I think it comes from the middle school. So at the middle school level, I believe we're combined. And so, Ms. Almendarez, can you potentially elaborate on that piece?
Yes, and we actually have one of our golf coaches here that can keep us honest. But yes, they are combined at the lower levels, and then they're individual male, female at the high school level.
Thank you. So this athletics cost by sport, this includes the middle schools and the high school? Oh, okay. Thank you. Do girls participate in wrestling at Beloit Memorial? I know that I've seen girls at the middle school, and I guess this is, again, probably more directed towards Mr. Gratz. I've seen girls participate in the middle school wrestling. Do they have the opportunity to participate in the Beloit Memorial wrestling team?
Yes, they do. And in fact, actually, the WA today would be the first girls wrestling is a recognized WA sport now this season. So next year, you would see girls wrestling as a separate line item here. But yes, to answer your question, it is offered as it was co-ed. We started kind of dividing it up. Where now they have to choose to wrestle with boys or with only girls.
Thank you. Looking at the, as Mrs. Rue pointed out, some of these are twice as much as others, and I imagine a lot probably plays into that in terms of equipment, travel, amount of travel, number of students participating. But I also broke it up looking at the females versus males, and in most cases, we spend a lot more on the males. Is that, outside of volleyball, are the price tags for the boys' teams or the male teams because there are more students participating?
So if we're strictly, this is, from what I'm gathering, just looking at addendums only. So generally when we're looking at addendums, and this is the conversation Ms. Almendarez and myself had recently, we try to plan ahead based on numbers and essentially allot coaching stipends based on the numbers in the programs. So for example, our boys soccer numbers are going to be easily 80 plus and potentially have another team added. And so we looked at, looking at how do we shift addendums to that sport. Girls volleyball, same thing. Do we have enough to have essentially 2 freshman teams? So we try to shift around based on the numbers in the programs. And that way, the goal is to not have to cut athletes. And in any way we can, try to keep kids participating because we know the value of just extracurriculars in general, not just our sports, but all the things. And so if we can keep people around by just shifting an addendum from one sport to another based on need, then that's what we do.
Thank you. Mrs. Levy.
Thank you. Very briefly, Mr. Gratz, something you just said just caused me to think about a question. When you think about adding multiple sports teams at the same level, for example, multiple freshman sports, does that complicate scheduling? I know that sometimes games are canceled because they may not have a freshman team or a JV team to compete against our students. So has that been taken into consideration when we think about expanding to multiple same tier teams?
Yeah, definitely. So we're done with scheduling now. And what we start to do is by looking at numbers over the summer and what we had in the 7th and 8th grade groups, we can start to kind of project, and then we will reach out and say, hey, we're probably going to have an extra JV 2 team, which are our freshmen. Who else has it? We just reach out around us. And so we are pretty, the schools around us and now us, we're getting to the point as well where we can project pretty well what we're going to have and who we won't have, for example. And we try to get those things out there so teams can try to fill their schedules as early as possible. And obviously we'll have those late cancellations, you know, injuries, academics, all the things kind of pop up mid-season, but we try to plan ahead as much as we can and build those schedules out to give kids a good opportunity to participate.
Any other questions, Mrs. Levy?
No, I don't think that last question was really answered, but I'm not. If we have multiple same-tier sports teams, is that going to cause a conflict if the teams we're competing against has one freshman team? Like, how does that work? And I guess my larger question is, do we have the capacity? And I understand not wanting to cut student athletes. I totally get that. But if we have 2 freshman teams in a sport and our competitors have one or don't, like, how does that impact whether or not our students are actually playing?
So we, sorry for not answering clearly. We go out and seek out teams that we know will have another team. So our boys soccer conference does not generally have a freshman boys soccer team. I think there's one school in our 8-team, or 2 schools if you count ourselves. And so for that schedule, we have to go out and seek out schools that we know likely will. And so we spend a lot of time doing that extra to fill those schedules. So we already know if we, you know, using that girls volleyball, for example, we know the teams that have a second JV2 team. And when we commit to that, we'll quickly fill that schedule with those kids. So we kind of have, there's not really we try not to put the cart before the horse, but we kind of have to project and plan at the same time.
Okay, so if I'm understanding you correctly, and I don't want to belabor this because we have lots of other things to discuss, thank you for that additional information. If we are going to have multiple same-tier sports teams, the scheduling has already been done out of conference, if necessary, to make sure that our student athletes are able to compete, and that the numbers we are seeing include what I'm assuming would be additional cost associated with that out of conference scheduling. Is that accurate?
Likely, yes.
Likely, yes. Thank you.
Are there any other questions on the athletics cost by sport? Mrs. Almendarez?
Excuse me. So the other section that we have to budget for is the cost of substitutes. And our district currently hires substitutes for nursing, paraprofessional, security, clerical, as well as teachers. And so this slide shows the comparable over the last 4 years of what that cost has run us. And you'll see just on teachers alone, about $100,000 reduction between 21-22 to this just recent school year, about 19% drop, and you see a drop in the next 2 and a slight increase in paras and nursing, and that's because we have been utilizing those a lot more. Overall, we have less staff than we did, obviously, 21-22, as we've been reducing staff, so that also reduces the number of absences, which then reduce the cost of having substitutes. The downside is we don't have as an abundant a substitute pool as we would like to have. And so that is also reflected in that $100,000 drop in the substitute teachers.
Any questions for Mrs. Almendarez and the substitute cost by category? Well, hearing none, Mrs. Almendarez, I do have one. So what we're looking at here, this is just for staff who are considered substitutes, or does this also include the dollars for if a teacher has to use his or her prep time to cover?
This is strictly substitute.
Okay, thank you. And do you know how many substitutes we currently have?
Oh, I'd just be guessing.
Okay.
But I can definitely get that number for you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And would you like all subgroups or just teachers, substitute teachers?
If it's not too difficult to get all subgroups, that would be great.
Wonderful, will do. Okay. And so then we have, to your question, Board President, we have other categories outside of the substitutes where we compensate teachers for additional duties, including using their prep time to cover other classes. So on this slide, we also reflect the teacher IEP. So sometimes IEPs cannot be conducted during the regular day, or they're using their prep time to conduct the IEP. And so this reflects that cost. And then we also have the time-carded time if they are taking over an additional class, or if they are otherwise supervising. Sometimes if we have a vacancy in a classroom, we do divvy up so that different teachers are absorbing that if we don't have a long-term sub. And sometimes if we do have a teacher absence long-term, we may need to separate the students into different classrooms. And so that's under the teacher other compensation, where we try to make sure we're fair with teachers for taking on the additional level of responsibilities.
Are there any questions for the other teacher pay expenditures?
Yeah, I do have one other question.
Mr. Nichols?
I go back to the previous slide. I just had a quick question. I noticed that our substitute nursing HRA has started going the other direction after 21, 22 going up. What can you give a reason for that?
Sure. I also have Ms. Beavers here that can chime in as necessary, but I think that because of some of the vacancies, we have had to utilize substitutes to help absorb some of those gaps in the staffing for both nurses and HRAs. I do believe historically, I don't know what we've done prior to my coming to the district, but I do believe that it is more common right now. For example, we had to have a long-term for one of our nursing vacancies.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mrs. Almendarez, I'm sorry I didn't get this question to you earlier. So just kind of in general, and maybe I can talk to you tomorrow get specifics, but so our a number of employees per group or whatever is going down. So we are also seeing some of the payouts going down. Are we trending in the right direction percentage-wise?
I would not say that they're equal. I actually started doing a comparable to ensure, again, because we do have vacancies, that we are trying to utilize substitutes and other forms of coverage for. And so it's not going to be apples to apples, because back in 2020, 2021, the same issues with staffing did not exist. So although we have less FTEs to fill, we still have vacancies on top of regular absences that our teachers may incur.
Thank you. And maybe for a future report, how are the number of sick days and personal days trending? Are employees tending to take more and more of those as the years go on and the staffing becomes a greater challenge? And this is, again, right now, staffing for teaching and education is a national problem. It's not just Beloit. So I understand and appreciate that. I'm just wondering how we might be doing.
So if we look at the 4-year comparison, and looking at the total number of teachers, for example, I averaged out the absence hours per teacher equated to 9.9 hours, which was 1.32 days per year. Of course, that stat is based solely on those the positions that are eligible for a substitute and who also had a substitute assigned. So based on that, it would be 1.32 days per year that our staff is taking, as far as teachers go, that they're taking off on average.
Basically 1 and 1/3 day.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
But again, I caution you that that's based solely on the positions that are eligible for substitutes that actually got a substitute that tallied on here. And so that is what I'm compiling, is to get a true picture of what the overall absenteeism is for the district so that I can give you an exact number.
Okay, well, I appreciate that, and I like that number, and so I will just put a shameless plug out there and thank all the teachers that show up to work every day.
Absolutely. Couldn't do without them. And so last, are there any questions on the IEP Blue Sheets slide?
No? Doesn't.
Okay.
Thank you, Mrs. Almendarez.
Thank you.
Just
And
final,
Dr. Garrison?
thank you. Final thoughts. One of the things that we wanted to do was, again, just kind of bring this report. We know there's other reports that we can keep, pulling to make sure the board has a good snapshot around, some of our expenditures. Of course, this is not all of them. Of course, naturally, we do thank, everybody who, of course, shows up to work every day. But like Mrs. Almendarez did mention, there's other times where teachers have to step in for when we can't find subs. And that's also a major conversation here in our school district. As it pertains to, just final thoughts, as it pertains to some of the addendums, again, these are conversations that we are not ready to bring a proposal to the board yet, but we are going to start having conversations in regards to, like, what does that actually look like possibly moving into the future. We know that in the future we will have more conversations around the budget and some of our budgetary restrictions that we're having to work from. All of these buckets of money is, of course, what my team and I look at a lot, sometimes too much, but we have to look at different buckets of opportunity as we kind of keep navigating the conversation here in the school district. And so I just want to make sure I shared that final thought.
Thank you, Dr. Garrison. I appreciate that, and I appreciate the effort from all of your cabinet members putting the presentations together. And the reason why I had requested the look at the addendum and extra pay is because sometimes we board members don't see and don't know everything, and we're never going to be able to be there, but we want to know where those holes in the buckets are so we can start helping you to see how we can plug those holes. Next, we've got the communication RFP for the 2026 referendum. Dr. Garrison.
Yes, ma'am. And so over the course of the past few months here, we wanted to venture into the RFP space for communication specialists, moving into the next, I shouldn't say operational and or capital referendum. I know the board did share that we wanted to, you gave me the push to go ahead and start moving in this direction. This will be the earliest that we've, started in the communication space, working with a communications partner. In the previous years, of course, since I've arrived, we have been internal, and last year was our first year that we had to support an external communications partner. And I can say there was a lot of new learning for me, not just because we didn't have a communications person at the time, but just because they bring a different lens as to the possibilities of our needs in the district and how we need to communicate that. And that's not saying that we did anything necessarily wrong in the previous opportunities, but having a different partner does allow us to see some things differently. And so, yes, there was some new learning there. So we did go out RFP. We did get back 3 RFP proposals. All of those are on board docs. I'm not going to pull up a presentation for that, but that is everything you can see is right on board docs from all three of the different proposals. One of the things that I will highlight in each of the proposals is that if you were to scroll all the way down to the last few pages of each proposal, you will see two separate thoughts. One, if the district decided to, if the board decided to go to operational referendum and its cost, and or a continued conversation or operational and capital. And so that final page there kind of gives us a snapshot of what it would cost if we were to continue with a partner over time into the possibilities of November. So the first number that you see is what they would charge if it was for both. Coming into, whether it was for one or for both, it's still the work. Let's just say it like that. If we were to separate the space, let's just say we decided to do operational referendum in April and then come back and do a capital referendum in November, that's where you see the additional cost. All of the proposals have that last slide there just to capture that space. And I did want to make sure that was something that the board kind of understood. And so if I was to give you a snapshot, not to say that we're just focusing on cost or anything, but if I was to give you a snapshot, we do know that the Donovan Group, if I start with them first, if you don't mind. Sure. If we start with the Donovan Group first, their overall cost was going to be $40,000 with an additional $21,000 if we were to continue with them, if we were to separate the questions. Okay, so in a nutshell, a little over $61,000. $61,000, sorry. Elations is a group that came to us. Naturally, when you put out an RFP, you put it out to, one could argue, the world. And Elations is one that jumped in, and they are not a communications partner in the state of Wisconsin. They do have a Chicago branch office, and they were in the same ballpark as the Donovan Group, which was $40,000 for their services between now and, of course, April or May, and then if they were to continue on, the additional $21,000 or so to bring them to $60,000. And then if we move into Hadley, Hadley's overall cost was $58,000 for the opportunities from now until, one could argue, May of next year. But they also had a flat rate of $5,350 for the continued months for 40 hours per month continuation. Each of the continuation spaces could look differently. And so I know $21,000 is what they mentioned if they were to stay on. After a referendum season in general, after April's decision is made by the voters, of course, typically May is a space where we are either celebrating the results of the referendum or we're back in that planning mode. And in those spaces is really just internal district things. We may not need the support of a communications person because we did a lot of that work on the front end throughout the year. And so they may jump back into conversation probably right around now, June into July. And so that's the conversational space that I wanted people to know because, we're playing with months, but there's also a lag time in between referendums. And that lag time typically is the work between April and May that transpires based off of if a referendum is successful or if a referendum is not successful. And so those are some of just the general thoughts that we can kind of work from as it pertains to these three contracts. As you all know, it's not anything new, but Hadley was our previous partner in this space. And so naturally, in going back to bid, they are interested in coming back for that space. The Donovan Group was a space that participated last year as well. So they are also interested in, again, this new group. Elations was the three bids that we were able to receive. Everything was followed as pertains to people submitting their information on time. Of course, all of the information is there for the board to review.
Thank you, Dr. Garrison. Do any board members have any questions and or a motion? Mrs. Levy.
It's not included in the notes, so I'm just wondering, is there an administrative recommendation for one of the three groups?
So naturally, my recommendation would be to go with the partner that we worked with last time, the Hadley Communications. One of the reasons when I think about Hadley is they've seen our internal space. And when I say they've seen our internal space, they really have seen our internal spaces and some of the things that we had to kind of work from without having a communications partner over the course of the school year, one could argue, since November. I know they came into the conversation pretty much in December, but that was, one could argue, a kind of a rush space. They had to kind of learn on the fly as it pertains to kind of what we are working from here in the school district of Beloit and some of our challenges. They were also able to, see some of the things that we are doing well. I think that's also very important. They capitalize on that space. They were a good partner to work with. They are a smaller company, which makes things a lot more personable. And so I believe that was a good space as well, because they really did kind of cater to what we were able to accomplish and or do in the midst of not having a communications person. So they did take on some additional, just things that they wouldn't have done if we had an internal person. But overall, I do believe that Hadley would be the communications group that I would want to move forward with.
Any other questions or comments? Mrs. Levy?
I move to approve the continuation of working with the Hadley Group in planning for the 2026 referendum.
I'll second.
So the motion is to approve continuing working with the Hadley Group for the 2026 referendum by Amy Levy, seconded by Brian Nichols. And did I get that motion correct, Mrs. Levy?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Any discussion? Mr. Romero?
Just a quick question. I'm how I know Hadley. I guess they were under the gun this last time, right? So, with your recommendation, you truly feel confident that they would be able to do better. I'm not saying that they did horrible, but they'd be able to do better with more time now allotted. Then you're really confident on that?
Yes, one of the things that we have to remember is the way we have had to do things is different than the way typically a lot of districts would probably go after a referendum space. Our district have worked through a lot of different budgetary constraints, and us going later, one could argue possibly did save us some money in the space. But since we are starting earlier, communications groups can do more. They can start having more conversations with the board around what is it that we want to see because it is the board's referendum, one could argue. What do you want to see in the communication space? What things that we want to really tackle in the next communication space? They can really lay out, some do's and some don'ts, conversations better. Hadley did suggest having some community sessions over this past time, which we, of course, attempted to kind of fulfill along with the board and asking for that space. But there are some things that they could do on the earlier side of things that we haven't been able to do in the previous years due to when we are, starting our budget. Now, the reality is, of course, we won't have all the final numbers until October, but that doesn't stop us from having some deep conversations and communications around our needs and getting that out in the forefront in the community across the community of Beloit.
Any other questions? Hearing none. All in favor of continuing with the Hadley Group?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next, we've got the consent agenda. Typically, there is no separate discussion of the items unless a board member so requests, in which event the item or items will be removed from the general order of business and considered in their normal sequence on the agenda. Are there any board members that would like any items removed from the consent agenda? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion for approval of the consent agenda.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Oh, second.
Motion by Amy Levy, seconded by Brian Nichols. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Next, we have Human Resources Employee Recommendations. Are there any open session questions on Exhibit A? Are there any closed session questions? Is there a motion for Exhibit A?
I move approval of Exhibit A as presented.
Is there a second?
I second.
We have a motion to accept Exhibit A as presented by Amy Levy, seconded by Joanne Rue. Mrs. Shope, may we get a roll call, please?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Any discussion? Mr. Romero?
I'm seeing a pattern of how, with these Exhibit As that have been coming up, just the way that we're handling the staffing, it sounds like it's more of a Band-Aid for what's going on right now. There's no real, it's one of those things where everything's been happening. We've just been doing this just because it's always been this way. But realistically, if I'm looking at it, and because I'm new, I have to look at all these policies and whatnot, I'm looking at everything. When it comes to this, it came across the policy 222.1, the rule 2. It says that, we're not supposed to be doing things as far as for positions that have been eliminated, mainly just the ones that are still posted that we're still trying to fill. That's a different story. I see that we are doing that in essence with these exhibits, and I've seen that they've been doing it in the past as well. It's just no one's really mentioned anything about that. If we're looking at the policy, I don't want this board and the district to be going against the policy and having issues and anything like that. So also, it looks like we just shifting around the responsibilities. It doesn't stay consistent with things. You're making temporary appointments that they drag on when there's no real clear end of when they're supposed to stop. It doesn't look like there's a long-term structure or plan to fix it. The extra page, like at first it seems manageable, but it does add up quickly, when only a few employees, certain ones get that workload added on only. It should be distributed more evenly. It's not fair to keep stacking on more while select few than others don't help out as well. It creates the burnout and it creates resentment eventually. And sometimes it drives people out with extra stuff. The policy does state administrative vacancies must be posted within 12 months. Any temporary assignments or extra compensation must be approved by the board and following hierarchies. For that reason, for my own thoughts, I don't follow the compensation and vacancy rules. I don't see it being followed. The temporary changes like permanent solutions, there's no structure on what's the permanent solution. It's just another Band-Aid after another Band-Aid after another Band-Aid. They should be, in my own opinion, they should be restructured into job titles and compensated accordingly on a consistent basis and spread out amongst everybody that's related to those particular job titles. That in turn ends up saving some funds because it's a constant and it's expected and you can be evaluated off of that as well. It's another evaluation metric that you can use to judge, the performance or to evaluate the performance. Like in this case, for example, the things that are happening with the chief of communications role, which is gone, the director of instruction, Mr. Bosco's position, that one's been eliminated also. So those are the ones that would fall against the policy that I don't know if I haven't heard an actual plan to get that resolved other than the Band-Aid. And that doesn't make me feel comfortable.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Romero. So the policy that Mr. Romero is referring to is 222.1 Rule 2, Temporary Administration Assignments. And this does speak to the vacancies in administrations, and it does say that they will be posted within 12 months. It does also say, under the compensation portion of this policy, superintendent recommendations for additional compensation for personnel performing the job duties of a vacant position in addition to their regular job duties or in place of their regular job duties shall be subject to board approval. So with all of the employee recommendations, they're subject, the ones that come to the board, we have to approve it. It's our decision. To follow up, it does say current employees may receive their daily average salary plus from 5 to 15% of that daily average salary or a salary adjustment commensurate with the position being temporarily filled, again, subject to board approval. No recommendation for additional compensation will be made for permanent additional duties assigned as a result of the dissolution of a position or for a vacant position that will not be posted and filled due to budgetary restraints. I'm like-minded in that I think that the Chief of Communications and Marketing position probably does fall under that. Any compensation adjustments approved under this policy end when the temporary position assignment or temporary assignment of duties end. And so I do concur with your statement, Mr. Romero, that we don't know when this is going to end. I don't know if there is going to be a restructuring or reexamination of job duties or job descriptions and how how those duties will be distributed and how people will be compensated for taking on those extra roles. Dr. Garrison?
Thank you for your thoughts. First, I want to make sure that we level set the conversation just a little bit. When we're thinking about extra pay for staff and when we take on different roles, you mentioned Mr. Bosco's position, where the extra duties and compensation came from was for Kelly Goldroot's position, which was eliminated back for Kelly Goldroot's position, not for Dr. Bosco's position, Mr. Bosco's position. Kelly Goldroot was the person, you weren't on the board at the time, who resigned with us, I want to say in January. So those additional compensation staff members that you see here was for that position. For when you're thinking about the communications position, the communications position has been vacant since November. We were still actively looking for that position. It did get approved for elimination for the next year's budget. That's 25, 26 school year, not for this year's budget. So from the communications perspective, we were actively looking for that, but we brought it to the board, of course, and then it was later approved for elimination in June. And so that position, we again followed in my opinion, followed the process that we have here in the district. When people are doing extra duties, when these things come up in a district that has had to have, of course, the millions of dollars of reductions, these duties do fall on people to do work. And I'm asking Mrs. Almendares to come to the mic because I do have some questions that maybe she can help me with as well. But there's a space in which, when we're thinking about staffing, to answer both of you all's space with the staffing space, when we made the eliminations, naturally from a staffing perspective, we have to look at what those duties will look like in other people's responsibilities. But that's also we just approved those eliminations in June of this year. And so that's a space, I guess, if you wanted to share anything in relationship to some of the job descriptions and changes.
I think if, excuse me, if I may just add, the work had to go somewhere, because since those duties had not been permanently redistributed, individuals had to take on those responsibilities, which is why it is being presented. I think the sequence of events can be argued in either direction. But for example, the chief of communication, we did not know at the time that we would not be backfilling that one. We actually had a candidate that we were looking to move forward with before that decision was made, but not in time for us to redo job descriptions for the remaining staff to absorb the work, if that makes sense.
Mrs. Levy?
Thank you. I'm not sure who this question is for, so please direct it to whoever you feel is most appropriate to answer. Do we have legal liability for not paying employees for additional duties that they have already completed?
Yes and no. So we all have additional duties as assigned as part of our job descriptions. Our district does have a policy that is very generous. It is also very specific to administrative positions, which not all of them are. And so if we look at policy, essentially the board would have to approve the additional compensation for those additional duties being reallocated to individuals.
Thank you.
Mrs. Almenders, some of these are hourly employees, some are salaried. How does that work if we have hourly employees taking on additional responsibilities to cover vacancies, temporary, or however it is? Do they get paid time and a half for overtime and additional pay, or is this all work that's done within their 40 hours?
So for the hourly staff, it is more so than the volume, it's the level of responsibility. Because normally an hourly staff member would be more entry, mid-level employee. And in the case of these hourlies, it is the level of responsibility of the duties that they're taking on. The overtime has been based on their regular hourly rate, if there is any.
Okay, any other questions? Another question I have is some of these are 5%, some are 15%, and the board policy does say between 5 and 15, but I'm a little perplexed by why, can you shed some light on that?
Absolutely. So it is based, going back to the volume, how the work is distributed amongst individuals. Sometimes it is one individual absorbing all the work. Sometimes it is multiple individuals that are taking on some of the different components of the position that those additional duties are covering. It's the relation of the person taking on the additional duties to the position that they are absorbing some of those responsibilities for. And so when we look at each of those positions, we look at what exactly are they absorbing additionally and how different is it from their daily job duties.
Do you know, is this how other school districts do this?
I know that we do this based on our policy, but I could not speak to other school districts, no.
Okay. Ms. Miller?
Thank you so much. These are some really good questions. And I think that this whole, Board President Johnson, to the point you just made, the range of 5 to 15% has been a point of contention and I think confusion in the past. So yeah, that's definitely maybe something worth like taking a look at some point. Um, Also appreciate Mr. Romero, your point. I'm very much in favor of following our own policy. I think if there has been some confusion in the order of operations, it's like I'm still trying to discern clarity and I'm appreciating the conversation. I guess I'm raising my hand just to insert the point that if there was some kind of an error here in like cart before the horse, et cetera, kind of stuff, people worked the jobs that they were asked to work. And I think that it is poor precedent to set to hold employees who are like serving our children accountable negatively for an error that they didn't make. So I am wholly in favor if we need to take a closer look at how we do this and execute this, or if this is something that like, you know, can come up at like in an evaluation space. Like I think there are a lot of really good avenues to, you know, take this on. But from what I can tell, there were conversations about like, and this is past precedent. We have more work than we have people, or we have shifting responsibilities. And while it is absolutely important, I fully agree to have a short-term and long-term plan and vision for how we sustainably, cost effectively, and like respectfully to staff's burnout and energy, like allocate those responsibilities. Sometimes you got to pinch hit, right? So I guess for me, I think that the right thing to do is to compensate people who were told that they would be compensated for the work that they have already completed. But I do want to say there have been really excellent points raised in this discussion, and I'm really grateful that we're having it.
Thank you. Brian Nichols?
Okay, I have a couple of questions. Well, number one is where will what budget line will the funding come from, since it's not obviously technically budgeted? So where would it come from?
Well, I do want to clarify that there is a budget for this because, for example, in the 24-25 school year, we had a budget for the Director of Instruction and STEAM. We did have a budget for the Chief of Communication and Marketing. All of these positions were budgeted for this school year that just ended yesterday. So that money is coming from the same funding source that would have paid those salaries and benefits at a much reduced rate. So this is not in addition to, this is in lieu of the positions that were vacated earlier in the school year than anticipated.
So, well, second part of that was, and this is going to be a statement, is this almost equates to a teacher without benefits, before benefits, just FYI. A couple other comments. So I understand the Chief of Communication. What's hard, what I'm having trouble reconciling is four different people worked on Chief of Communication duties, and so did the Hadley Group. Correct, Dr. Garrison? Okay, so, you know.
Hadley worked with us with the referendum.
Right,
Yeah.
but from a communication standpoint and doing
Sure.
some of the things, yeah, that's where I'm leading to. So we don't really know how much all that ended up costing the district, do we?
From the referendum perspective?
Well,
or just
yeah, that and this together.
Well, we do have the numbers for, and I can give you that information as soon as I'm able to look it
Well,
up. But
that would be good to know.
Sure.
And then secondly, it's the policy is 5 to 15. What happened to 10? What happened to 7? What happened to 6? What happened to 12? There's 5 or 15, but there's a range. I think that's, and hopefully that's what I'm hearing from some of the other board members is, you know, we understand we probably need to do this, but there's no rhyme to reason it's a 5 or it's a 15.
Not specific. It's very subjective, which is why I personally would recommend that the policy be reviewed and updated to be a little less subjective to those that are applying the percentage to the additional duties that each individual is taking on. But yeah, there is a range, and 5 to 15 They fell between the two. You're right. There's no 12, there's no 7,
Or even a 10.
or even a 10.
So,
Agreed.
anyway. Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Romero?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to make it clear that it's not that, to Mrs. Miller's point, yes, people do need to be compensated for extra work, and it's not that I don't want to make sure they're compensated. It's the means that we're going about doing this. It seems broken, and it seems like we're going against policies. It seems like the spirit of what this policy was about kind of got a little warped, so to speak, over time, and used differently to somebody's interpretation, however it did at that point. The main reason that I'm bringing this up is because I see this as an issue, and it's an ongoing issue. For example, this time it's running us close to $30,000 for this kind of thing happening. I'm looking to have some kind of solution brought forth so it becomes more stagnant. So when these things do come, it won't be to the tune of like a $30,000 bill that we had to come up with. It'll be something lesser because it's already been worked through as the pillow, so to speak, in job descriptions if need be. But again, we do need a policy like this, obviously, because things do happen, and things have happened, and we're dealing with times right now where we're dealing with issues that you haven't had to deal with before. So that's the spirit of why I'm bringing this up and why I think it needs to be really looked at and solutionized. I'd like to see a solution for this so we don't have to keep coming back to this kind of same type of solution for the next time things happen. And again, that's I don't want to have to do a job for free, and I don't expect anybody else to have to do that either. But at the same time, it's not the worker's fault that it's written like this, and it falls above somebody else. They're above their pay grade. So that's kind of where I'm looking at, that we have to follow that policy a little bit more, and that's the spirit that I'm looking at.
Thank you, Mr. Romero. Ms. Miller?
Thank you. Mr. Romero, I fully, wholeheartedly agree with what you said. One thing that has come up a few times over the last couple of board meetings we've had is I think just the need to calibrate. And so I'm just curious if there is an upcoming potential for us to, sit down as a board and do some, with our administration, with Dr. Garrison and his team, to listen to what their long-term plans are. Because I feel like we haven't had the opportunity to do that. And I feel like this would be a wonderful place for this conversation to take place. So we could come closer together, listen to, find out what we don't know in terms of what plans are being laid or have been laid. And then, offer our guidance in that visioning space so that we can be better calibrated to avoid exactly this issue. Because I definitely agree, coming up with oops, here's $30,000, this is not ideal. And I don't think anybody thinks this is ideal. So I just wanted to offer that appreciation for the point that you made. And I just would like to, again, I think just insert that I think it would be a great idea for us to all schedule that time, really listen to Dr. Garrison and his team, and have just a more filled in picture and view of what plans do currently exist so that we can be better informed making those plans together as a team. I really thank you for taking my comment.
Thank you. Some questions I have. Are there any other requests for extra pay out there that we don't know about yet? And we still don't have, and we aren't going to have, the chief of communications or what was the other one? The director of instruction positions. So until new job descriptions are created with adjusted compensation, are we going to keep seeing additional requests for extra pay? And for me, that's problematic because I know when I signed my teacher contract back 4 years ago, there was a clause there that said, you're going to do anything else we ask you to. And to me, it seems wholly unfair that we are giving administrators extra pay for doing extra duties, but all of you teachers, guess what? We're going to ask you to do something, and you better do it. Can somebody please help me understand that?
I think when the statement is made that teachers aren't being compensated for extra things that they are doing, that's not true. There's places where blue sheets are turned in, and we do pay teachers for when they're taking on extra duties throughout the entire year. I know the report that we did just get through, of course, going through, gives a holistic approach to the thousands of dollars that we have to pay for when teachers are out and subbing and doing that type of thing. And so there's a larger group of people that is assisting us in that space, but they are being compensated in that space, and it goes straight through all staff. I think the problem sometimes in this context is that there is this 5 and 15% conversation that we do need to have. I have had the conversation with HR in regards to this, not just this year, but just as in conversations in general, that the 5 to 15% one could look at it as problematic. And I say problematic because of the range. Why not 7 flat across the district if that's the number? Why not 5 or why not 10, as Mr. Nichols just mentioned? So I think that's a bigger conversation. But when administrators are also out and things like this do transpire, more work is put on more people, and the staff that we have had to kind of reduce over the many years. One could argue in this space we probably did save some money without having to hire all of these positions back. So there's I hate to say it not necessarily like a tug of war, Mrs. Johnson, or anything. I'm sorry, board. But it's more of this is a real space that we've had to deal with here in our conversations for many years. And there are people that's not even on this list that have taken on additional duties as we kind of navigate through these conversations. And so I just feel like this is a space in which our districts had to work through with 30 million, 20, whatever $1 million worth of reductions. And if we look at the $20+ million worth of reductions and we start thinking about how we're compensating our staff, whether it be teachers and or in this place, the policy that gives us the guidelines of 5 to 15%, I do believe the people who have put together have stepped in and helped us, whether it be administrators or whether it be building staff here or whether it be teachers. I think it's across the board duly noted that we've had to kind of keep navigating through this, unfortunate, budgetary constraints. And so it's not a perfect answer, Mrs. Johnson, but I do want to note that we are still paying teachers, and there's conversations that we're having right now around additional pay, even looking at Act 20 possibly for next year for our teachers and how we can look at that space. And so I just think that it's a across the board space that we have to look at, and it's not just pointed at one group over the other. It's how we compensate our staff through these very difficult budgetary constraints that we unfortunately have to keep navigating through.
Thank you. Mrs. Rue?
Thank you. So Dr. Garrison just mentioned Act 20, and I think the trick with classroom teachers or reading coaches in the building is that our duties are just covered by everything that is face-to-face with children, where these are parsed out more by like activities. So I will say with Act 20, I know there were teachers and there were coaches that were putting in many, many extra hours. And I don't know, I didn't see those listed anywhere on something, but I do know that there was a lot of extra work done at the building level. So Dr. Garrison, is that, when you were talking about Act 20, is that something you're talking about, like working to compensate all of our coaches and teachers that put in extra hours to figure out the unfunded bill, as Megan likes to call it?
So we did have some of those conversations this year. This was our first go at it. And naturally, across the state, we've had this conversation around like, what does this new thing mean? And so since we were able to kind of see this for the first time, I have had conversations with the BEA in regards to the possibilities of this coming back for additional conversations around what we could do differently next year in this space, as Mrs. Rue. And so, but those are continued conversations because Act 20 is unfunded, and there's a lot of people saying it's going to stay. Some people think it's going to go away, and then it's like this, tug of war. I don't think it's going away, but there's a lot of conversations that people are talking about as it pertains to how this can be funded. And so if it's funded differently, then it allows us to do things differently in this space. Until then, that's still up for discussions. And again, I'm not going to speak for the BA, but those are conversations that we have had around bringing this back to the conversation.
Mr. Nichols?
Just a couple other thoughts. I too would echo the fact that this is certainly not the fault of the people that did all the extra work, because they do need to be compensated. I think one of the things in reading the policy, obviously the policy needs reviewed. I think we all agree with that. And then secondly is I think we could do a better job of planning ahead and saying, well, we're going to need to use 2 people for 3 months or 6 months or 4 months or whatever the number is to do this, and it's 5% or whatever the number is. But that's something I think we need to talk and have discussions about this and to make it equitable for everybody that this happens to. Thank goodness we've got great people who do these things, and I think we need to manage it on the front end better than waiting till it's over with, and then here we are. My opinion. Thank you.
Mr. Romero?
Yeah, just to kind of mirror a question that Ms. Johnson had mentioned, Dr. Garrison, are there more coming down the list? Like, just for example, I'm looking here on this Exhibit A, for example, when it looks like the principal for Converse went to help at Merrill, correct? Like in May and all that. So that principal is bouncing back and forth. I believe, if I remember reading, someone has to assume a principal position or a principalship, even temporarily when the principal's not there. So would that fall on the assistant principal to do that?
So there are times when the principals are out of the building, and of course the assistant principal does take on those responsibilities of overseeing the work of the building. Okay. But when you start looking at extended time, that's when we run into this space of pay, because it's not supposed to be that space. So to answer to your question, yes, we do want to have an administrator over the building. And yes, there's times where principals are out and assistant principals do cover. But then, like I said, when you look at the extended time, that's when this starts to, come into the conversation. And this year, just a different year for us. We've had, principals, had to be out for different parts of the school year, right. And it did put us in these different spaces this year.
And I understand, I understand that, and I get it. So what I'm wondering is that the assistant principal, I don't see the assistant principal for Converse here asking for, compensation to take the principalship duties when the position isn't gone, especially that's a higher position. And for the code was saying when an administrator is taking up, a position higher, doing those temporary duties, that's where the compensation would pay. So to kind of mirror Dr. or Mrs. Johnson's question, is this going to be another thing that we're going to see coming down the line? And is that covered within the budget, the extra budget that Ms. Almendares was mentioning? Would that be covered in that? Or because I'm looking at those finances already budgeted for, and I'm just worried that we're going to go over on time with DPI and using the next fiscal year's budget money for that. I don't want to get caught in that kind of, constraint.
So to answer your question, are there additional positions that may come up? These come to, HR, they come to me, and then we, of course, review it, and then there's a conversation around when it comes to the board. And so, yes, there's a possibility that there may be additional people that comes through this pipeline based off of the policy that we have, not based off of, we're trying to, hold off on Exhibit A, more so than it is, here we are with another conversation, and here is another set of possible compensation spaces we have to cross over into. As it pertains to will it be budgeted for? Yes. The answer to that question is yes. Naturally, those positions are out of our budget, one could argue, but we still have those fundings there. And sometimes it taps into the $2,000 range or versus a, let's just say, $80,000 job. And so there was a space there where, there may be a duties that people are taking on, but never is it the entire job description of someone. I mean, there's possibilities there, but the reality is we try to work with our staff and making sure that what we're asking them to do is reasonable within their time frame in which they're working. I don't know if that answers your question specifically or holistically, but that is an ongoing conversation. Not because we just got people just sitting in the wayside, but as these things come to us, we want to address them. I can tell you I can do a better job as a district administrator when these things come, but I always try to make sure that there's a proper timing for it, and that's something that maybe that's something that we can kind of hone in on when we look at the policy again. The timing around when these things are coming versus how they're being presented.
Right. So then just to throw it out there, maybe we should have a cutoff time for this round, just to say, hey, listen, because everybody knows what they've done extra and what they've asked for, and say, hey, if you're going to ask for this, this is your cutoff time to start putting it all together. So we don't have to keep doing this over and over and over again. Next thing you know, we're a couple more Schedule A's down the road, and we're doing stuff from compensating back from March and February, March, and things like that. So just a thought, I guess I would say, just maybe come up with a cutoff time, submit your request by so-and-so.
That's a great suggestion. I think that's something that can be looked at through policy. I will say that these things happen throughout the year, though. I mean, people may resign February 1st, as an example, and the cutoff was, let's just say, January 1st. But then now we're looking at another set of people who are taking on additional duties.
Oh, I'm just referring to this just going forward.
Sure.
That's all. That's this from the stuff that we've already from this past year. Because I understand, people are going to resign, throughout the year, but there's people that are still working that haven't resigned yet. So I'm not necessarily speaking to them. I'm speaking just to people that have this past year have already done the extra duties that haven't submitted, for what they've done, if they're going to or not. And if you're going to do it by this date, so we can just, start it fresh and move forward, so we're not going to the next few into the year.
Thank you. Mrs. Rue?
Yes, I was just going to say, I think this reminds me that the ad hoc committee, the budget ad hoc committee, had talked about like restructuring COLAC, and that we need to look at the roles and all of that. So I think that's something that we need to keep reminding ourselves too, that that's something that needs to be done. I don't know how that happens, but I do remember Carol Fox and John Winkleman working hard on that.
Yes, you are correct. In fact, that was one of their recommendations to the board, was it last month, that we restructure COLAC and make reductions to the tune of $1 million. If there aren't any other questions or comments, there is a motion by Amy Levy, seconded by Joanne Rue. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I oppose. Motion carries 5-1. Next, we have executive session. A motion may be made and a vote taken to convene the Board of Education into closed session pursuant to Section 19.85, Parent 1, Parent F of the Wisconsin State Statutes for the purpose of reviewing the expulsion orders of the independent hearing officer pursuant to Section 120.13, Parent 1, Parent E4H of the Wisconsin State Statutes. The Board of Education shall, upon review, approve, reverse, or modify the orders. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Amy Levy, seconded by Brian Nichols. Any discussion? Hearing none. Mrs. Schultz, may we get a roll call, please?
Yes. Just waiting for the computer to catch up. Juan Romero,
Aye.
Amy Levy,
Aye.
Brian Nichols,
Aye.
Megan Miller,
Aye.
Joanne Rule,
Aye.
Tia Johnson.
Aye.
Motion carried unanimously.
The Board of Education may reconvene to public session in order to take any action if necessary on items discussed in closed session. However, I don't anticipate there being any, and we will probably adjourn from closed session. Thank you, everyone. Have a good 4th of July and enjoy the weather.
Thank you.